Elijah McCarter's knife cut through the rope like it was cutting through 5 years of silence. The Cherokee woman dropped to the dirt, gasping, clawing at her bruised throat. The whole town of Redstone stood frozen, and Eli knew in that single heartbeat he'd just made himself an enemy of every man, woman, and child watching. But when her dark eyes met his, something shifted in his chest, something that had been dead since he buried his wife and daughter. He didn't save her to be a hero. He saved her because he was tired of letting people die while he stood by and did nothing. If stories like this speak to your heart, subscribe to my channel and follow this tale to the very end. Drop a comment telling me which city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. The sun hung brutal over Redstone, Colorado territory, autumn of 1879. Eli McCarter hadn't planned on saving anyone. He'd ridden into town for salt coffee and 10 pounds of nails. Simple errands for a simple man living a quiet life on a ranch 2 hours from anywhere that mattered. But fate had other plans. The crowd gathered near the old livery stable numbered close to 40. Men in dusty work clothes. Women clutching children close. Even the preacher stood watching, Bible pressed to his chest like a shield. And in the center of it all, a rope. A woman. A slow death. She was tall. Taller than most men Eli had known. Cherokee by the look of her braided hair and copper skin. Her bare feet dangled 3 inches off the ground, kicking weakly against nothing. The rope had been cinched tight around her throat, and her face had gone from brown to purple. But her eyes. Lord, her eyes. They weren't begging. They weren't crying. They were burning. Defiant. Like she was daring death itself to finish the job. Sheriff Thomas Harlan stood beneath her, arms crossed, watching the life drain out of her like it was Sunday entertainment. "Let this be a lesson," Harlan announced, voice carrying across the silent crowd. "We don't tolerate savages in Redstone. Not after what they did to my brother. Not after what they've done to decent folk all across this territory." A few men nodded. A woman shouted, "Let her swing!" Eli's horse shifted beneath him. His hands tightened on the reins. "Walk away," he told himself. "This ain't your fight. You've got enough ghosts already." The Cherokee woman's kicks grew weaker. Her fingers clawed uselessly at the rope. Eli thought about Sarah, his wife, the way she'd looked at him the morning he rode off to War Belly Round with their daughter. "Come home to us," she'd said. He hadn't. Not in time. Fever took them both while he was 500 miles away fighting someone else's battle. He'd spent 5 years punishing himself for that. 5 years of silence. 5 years of empty chairs and cold suppers and talking to no one but his horse. "Walk away, Eli." The woman's eyes found his across the crowd. She didn't beg, didn't plead. She just looked at him. Like she was asking one simple question. "Are you the kind of man who watches, or the kind who acts?" Eli's knife was in his hand before he'd made the conscious choice to draw it. He spurred his horse forward, pushing through the stunned crowd. Someone shouted. Someone grabbed at his coat. He shook them off. "McCarter!" Sheriff Harlan roared. "What in God's name do you think you're—" Eli's arm swept up. The blade caught firelight. One clean cut. The rope snapped. The Cherokee woman crashed to the ground like a felled tree. She landed hard on her side, gasping, choking, sucking air through her damaged throat. The crowd went silent. Then chaos. "He cut her down!" Someone screamed. "The hermit cut her down! Grab him! String them both up!" Sheriff Harlan drew his Colt face twisted with rage. "You just made the worst mistake of your miserable life, McCarter. That savage was sentenced to hang by the laws of this town." Eli dismounted slow. He stood between Harlan and the gasping woman's shoulders squared. "What law?" Eli's voice came out rusty. He hadn't spoken this many words in months. "You got a judge hiding somewhere I can't see a jury? Or did you just decide to murder a woman because she's got brown skin and you've got a badge?" Harlan's gun trembled. "My brother—" "Your brother was killed by Ute raiders 10 years ago, 300 miles north of here." Eli didn't blink. This woman's Cherokee. They ain't even the same tribe. But I reckon all Indians look alike when you're too drunk on hate to see straight." Murmurs rippled through the crowd, some angry, some uncertain. Doc Whitmore, the town physician, stepped forward hesitantly. "Tom, maybe we should—" "Shut up, Sam." Harlan's gun leveled at Eli's chest. "I'm giving you one chance, McCarter. One. Get back on your horse, ride back to your sad little ranch, and pretend this never happened. Let me finish what needs finishing." Eli looked down at the Cherokee woman. She'd managed to push herself up on one elbow. Her throat was a mess of rope burns and bruises, but she was breathing, watching him with those fierce dark eyes. He thought about Sarah again, about his daughter born and dead without him ever seeing her face, about 5 years of silence and guilt, and wondering why he was still alive when everyone he loved wasn't. "No," Eli said quietly. "What?" "No," louder now. "I ain't walking away. I ain't letting you kill this woman. You want her dead? You'll have to go through me first." The crowd shifted. Some men reached for their guns, but they hesitated. Eli McCarter was known in these parts not as a talker, but as a Union sharpshooter who'd killed more Confederate soldiers than anyone cared to count. The kind of man who didn't miss. His hand rested easy on his holstered pistol. 40 against 1, McCarter," Harlan said, but his voice had lost some of its certainty. "You can't win this." "Maybe not." Eli's gray eyes were cold as mountain ice. "But I promise you, Sheriff, you'll be the first man I drop. And you know I don't miss." Silence. Harlan's jaw worked. His gun wavered. Eli waited. His heart pounded, but his hand was steady. He'd faced down Confederate cavalry. He'd survived Antietam. One small-town sheriff with a grudge didn't scare him. What scared him was the realization that he cared about something again. For the first time in 5 years, he actually cared whether he lived or died. And it was because of this stranger, this Cherokee woman bleeding in the dirt behind him. "Fine," Harlan finally spat. He lowered his gun, but his eyes promised murder. "Take her. Take your savage pet. But hear me, good McCarter, this ain't over. Not by a long shot. Tonight, tomorrow, next week, I'm coming for both of you. And when I do, there won't be no fancy knife tricks to save you." Eli didn't answer. He turned his back on the sheriff, a deliberate insult, a show of contempt, and knelt beside the Cherokee woman. Up close, she was even more striking. High cheekbones, strong jaw, eyes that held more pain than anyone should carry. She couldn't have been older than 30, but those eyes had seen lifetimes. "Can you stand?" His voice softened. Gentle, like he was talking to a spooked horse. She studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded once. He offered his hand. She ignored it. Instead, she pushed herself up on her own swaying but upright. Proud. Refusing help even when she could barely breathe. Stubborn Eli thought. Good, she'll need that. "My wagon's at the edge of town," he said. "Think you can walk that far?" Another nod. No words. Just that unwavering gaze. They moved through the crowd together. Eli in front, hand on his gun, the Cherokee woman behind him, bare feet leaving small bloody prints in the dust. The townspeople parted like water around Stone's faces twisted with fear and hatred. Maggie Hollister, who ran the general store, spat at Eli's feet. "Traitor! Indian lover!" Eli kept walking. A young boy threw a rock. It bounced off the Cherokee woman's shoulder. She didn't flinch, didn't even look. They reached the wagon. Eli helped her up onto the seat. This time she accepted his hand. Her grip stronger than he'd expected, and climbed up beside her. He flicked the reins. The horses started forward. Behind them, Sheriff Harlan's voice carried across the square. "You're a dead man, McCarter, a dead man walking." Eli didn't look back. The ride to his ranch took nearly 2 hours. Neither of them spoke. Eli watched her from the corner of his eye. She sat rigid, hands folded in her lap, eyes fixed on the road ahead. The bruises on her neck had darkened to black and purple. Every breath seemed to cost her. But she didn't complain, didn't cry, didn't even ask where he was taking her. That kind of silence wasn't peace. It was survival. Eli recognized it because he'd worn the same silence for 5 years. When the ranch came into view, small cabin sagging barn fences that needed mending, he felt a strange embarrassment. After his family died, he'd stopped caring what the place looked like, stopped caring about much of anything. Now he saw it through her eyes. A lonely man's lonely home. He stopped the wagon near the porch. "This is it. Ain't much, but it's defensible. Good sight lines. One road in." She turned her head slowly, taking in the property. Then she looked at him. Really looked like she was reading something written on his soul. "Why?" Her voice came out raspy, damaged from the rope. But the word carried weight. Eli thought about lying. Thought about saying something noble about justice or righteousness or Christian duty. Instead, he told her the truth. "Because I'm tired of standing by while people die." He climbed down from the wagon, not meeting her eyes. "Because 5 years ago, I wasn't there when my wife and daughter needed me. And they died alone while I was fighting a war that didn't matter." He helped her down. She moved stiffly, wounded pride warring with wounded body. "I ain't asking for your trust," he continued. "I ain't asking for nothing. But you're welcome to stay until you heal, until it's safe, or until you decide you'd rather take your chances somewhere else." She stood before him in the fading afternoon light, tall, battered, unbowed. "Aiyana," she said finally. "What?" "My name. Aiyana." Each word seemed to hurt her throat, but she said them anyway. "It means eternal blossom." Eli nodded slowly. "I'm Elijah. Most folks call me Eli." He paused. "The ones who talk to me anyway." Something flickered in her eyes. Not quite a smile, but close. He led her inside the cabin. One room sparsely furnished. A bed in the corner. A table with 2 chairs, though he couldn't remember the last time anyone had sat in the second one. A fireplace with cold ashes. "Bed's yours," he said. "I'll take the floor by the door." "No." Her voice was firm despite the damage. "I do not need the bed. You're hurt. I have slept on harder ground than your floor." She moved to the far corner, lowering herself against the wall back straight. "This is your home. I will not take your bed." Eli opened his mouth to argue, then stopped. He recognized the look in her eyes, the same pride that made her refuse his hand when she could barely stand. Pushing would only insult her. "All right," he said. "Suit yourself." He built a fire, found some dried venison and hardtack, set a plate near her, then took his own to the table. They ate in silence. Outside, the sun dropped below the mountains, painting the sky blood red. "They will come." Aiyana's voice broke the quiet. "The sheriff, his men, they will not let this stand. I know. You should not have interfered." She wasn't angry, just stating fact. "You have made yourself an enemy of your own people." Eli chewed his venison, thinking. "They ain't my people, haven't been for a long time." "Why?" "Because good people don't hang women for the crime of existing." He met her eyes across the dim cabin. "And if that makes me a traitor, then I reckon I've been a traitor my whole life without knowing it." Aiyana studied him. The firelight played across her bruised face, softening the harsh lines. "You are strange," she finally said. "Strange white man." "I've been called worse." Another flicker, almost a smile. Then gone. Night fell heavy around the cabin. Eli positioned himself by the door, Winchester across his lap. Aiyana remained in her corner, eyes open, watching the darkness outside the window. Neither slept. Around midnight, a sound cut through the silence. Hooves. Distant but approaching. Eli was on his feet instantly, rifle raised. Aiyana stood too, moving silent as a shadow despite her injuries. Her eyes had gone hard, the fear she'd hidden all day finally surfacing. How many? She whispered. Eli peered through a crack in the shutters. Can't tell yet. Coming from the east. From town. The hoofbeats grew louder, closer, then stopped. A voice rang out in the darkness. Sheriff Harlan's voice, rough with whiskey and hate. McCarter, I know you can hear me. Eli didn't answer. We're giving you one last chance. Send out the savage and we'll let you live. You can go back to your sad, lonely life and pretend this never happened. Eli looked at Aiyana. She stood rigid, hands clenched at her sides. The rope burns on her neck seemed to throb in the firelight. What do you want to do? He asked quietly. She met his eyes. In them he saw something he hadn't expected. Not fear, not resignation, hope. Faint, fragile, but real. I want to live, she said simply. For the first time in many moons, I want to live. Eli nodded. He moved to the door, opened it a crack. Go to hell, Harlan, he called into the darkness. Silence. Then Harlan's laugh, ugly and cruel. Have it your way, McCarter. Have it your way. The hoofbeats retreated, but both of them knew this was just the beginning. Eli closed the door, turned to find Aiyana watching him. Why did you do that? She asked. You could have given me to them, saved yourself. Eli thought about Sarah, about his daughter he'd never held, about 5 years of guilt and silence and wishing he'd died in the war instead of coming home to empty rooms. Because some things are worth fighting for, he said quietly. And I've spent too damn long forgetting that. Aiyana was silent for a long moment. Then she did something unexpected. She reached out and touched his arm. Just briefly. Just enough to say what words couldn't. Thank you. Eli nodded. He returned to his position by the door. Outside, the Colorado night stretched cold and dark. Tomorrow would bring trouble, that was certain. Sheriff Harlan wasn't the type to let this go. But for the first time in 5 years, Eli McCarter didn't feel alone, and that he realized might be worth dying for. Dawn came slow and gray, filtering through the cracks in the cabin walls like thin fingers of smoke. Eli hadn't slept. His back ached from sitting against the door all night, Winchester across his lap, ears straining for any sound of approaching horses. But Harlan hadn't returned. Not yet. He looked across the room. Aiyana sat exactly where she'd been hours ago, back straight against the wall, eyes open, watching him. You didn't sleep either, he said. No. The bed's still there. Offer still stands. I do not sleep in strange places. Her voice was still raspy, damaged. Not until I know if I will wake up. Eli nodded slowly. He understood that kind of caution. 5 years alone had taught him the same lesson. He stood, joints popping, and moved to the cold fireplace. I need to check the fence line. Storm knocked some posts loose last week. Cattle could break through. Aiyana rose smoothly despite her injuries. I will help. You're hurt. You should rest. I do not rest while others work. Her chin lifted. I am not weak. Eli studied her for a moment. The bruises on her neck had turned darker overnight, an ugly collar of purple and black. But her eyes were clear, determined. Never said you were weak, he replied quietly. All right, come on then. They walked out into the pale morning light. Frost clung to the grass, crunching under their boots. Eli had found an old pair of Sarah's shoes in a trunk. They were too small for Aiyana's feet, but better than nothing. He didn't tell her whose shoes they were. Some things were better left unspoken. The fence line ran along the eastern edge of his property, nearly a quarter-mile of posts and wire. 3 posts had snapped in the wind, leaving gaps wide enough for cattle to wander through. Eli grabbed a shovel and started digging out the broken post. The frozen ground fought back hard as stone. Without a word, Aiyana moved to the pile of replacement posts stacked near the barn. She lifted one, a full-length log that Eli usually struggled to carry, and brought it over like it weighed nothing. He stopped digging, stared. You gonna gawk all morning? She said. Or you gonna dig?" A surprised laugh escaped him. Rough, unused. He couldn't remember the last time he'd laughed. "Yes, ma'am," he said, and went back to digging. They worked through the morning without talking. He dug, she lifted, he hammered, she held the posts steady. Their rhythm found itself naturally, two people moving around each other like they'd done this 100 times before. Around midday, Eli pulled out his canteen, took a long drink, then offered it to her. Aiyana hesitated, just for a moment. Then she took it, drank, and passed it back. Their fingers brushed. Neither acknowledged it. "You work hard," she said finally, "for a man who lives alone." "Ranch don't care if I'm alone or not. Work still needs doing." "But why?" She gestured at the empty land around them. "No wife, no children, no one to leave this to. Why do you work so hard for nothing?" The question hit harder than she probably intended. Eli drove the hammer into a nail buying time. "Used to have a wife," he said quietly. "Sarah, and a daughter. Never even got to meet her. They died while I was away fighting in the war." Aiyana was silent. "After that," he shrugged. "Didn't seem much point in anything. Came out here thinking I'd just disappear, work myself to death maybe, let the land swallow me up." "But you are still here?" "Yeah." He looked at her. "Guess I'm too stubborn to die." Something shifted in her expression. Recognition. Understanding. "My mother died on the long walk," she said. Trail of tears. "I was 7 summers old. She carried me until she could not carry herself anymore." Eli stopped hammering. "My father raised me after, taught me to hunt, to fight, to survive." Her jaw tightened. "When he died 3 winters ago, the tribal council decided I needed a husband, someone to control me. They chose the chief's son, a cruel man who beat his first wife until she drowned herself in the river. And you refused." "I refused." Her eyes met his. "I told them I would rather die than belong to a man who saw women as property, so they decided to grant my wish." The words hung between them. Eli felt something crack open in his chest. Anger, yes, but also a fierce respect. "Your own people," he said slowly. "They did that to you. Some of them." She picked up another post, muscles flexing. "Not all, but enough. That's why the town got hold of you. Your tribe handed you over. They cast me out, left me in the wilderness with nothing. I walked for 3 days before the white men found me." A bitter smile crossed her face. They saw Cherokee woman alone. Easy prey, easy entertainment. Eli's hands tightened on the hammer. The thought of what she'd endured, rejected by her own people, hunted by strangers, strung up for a crowd's amusement, made his blood run hot. "I'm sorry," he said. It felt inadequate, pathetic even. "Do not be sorry." She set the post into the hole. "Be angry. Anger is useful. Sorry is not." He looked at her, really looked, and saw not a victim, but a survivor. Someone who had been beaten down by 2 worlds and refused to stay down. "You're something else," he said quietly. "You know that I am Cherokee." She held the post steady while he drove in the nails. "We do not break easily." They finished the fence line as the sun reached its peak, walked back to the cabin in comfortable silence. Eli made a thin soup from dried beans and the last of his salt pork. They ate together at the table, the first time anyone had sat across from him there in 5 years. Aiyana ate slowly, carefully. The rope burns made swallowing painful. "Harlan will come back," she said between bites. "Tonight. Tomorrow. He will not stop." "I know." "You could still let me go. I could disappear into the mountains. Find another tribe maybe. You would be safe." Eli set down his spoon. "That what you want to run?" She was quiet for a long moment. Her fingers traced the edge of the wooden bowl. "No," she admitted. "I am tired of running, tired of being cast out, tired of belonging nowhere." "Then stay." "It is not that simple." "Sure it is." He leaned forward. "You stay. We fight. Whatever comes, we face it together. That's simple." Aiyana stared at him. "Why? Why would you risk your life for a stranger? A Cherokee woman you met yesterday." Eli thought about it, really thought. "Because yesterday when I saw you hanging there, I saw myself." He spoke slowly, finding the words as he went. "I've been dead inside for 5 years, going through the motions, waiting to stop breathing, and then I looked in your eyes and saw someone fighting to live, really fighting, and I thought, maybe I want to fight too. Maybe I'm not ready to give up yet." "So you saved me to save yourself?" "Maybe." He met her gaze. "That make it less real." She considered this. Then slowly she shook her head. "No," she said softly. "It makes it more real." That afternoon, Eli taught her the layout of his property, the best places to take cover if attacked, where he kept the extra ammunition, how to work the Winchester if something happened to him. She learned fast, faster than anyone he'd ever known. "You've handled rifles before," he observed. "My father taught me. The reservation agents did not approve." A ghost of a smile. "I did not care what they approved." "Bet you didn't." They were standing near the barn when the sound came. Hoofbeats, multiple riders, coming fast from the direction of town. Eli's hand went to his pistol. "Inside, now!" But Aiyana didn't move. She was staring at the approaching dust cloud, her expression unreadable. "Those are not white men's horses," she said quietly. Eli squinted. She was right. The riders moved differently, sat differently. And as they drew closer, he saw the truth. Indians. At least a dozen of them. Cherokee, by their dress. "Your people?" he asked. Aiyana's face had gone hard as stone. "My former people." The riders stopped at the edge of his property. One of them, an older man with gray-streaked hair and a chief's bearing, raised his hand in a gesture that was half greeting, half command. "Aiyana!" he called out. "Step forward." She didn't move. The old man's eyes narrowed. "You will not disobey me twice, girl. Come here, now." Eli stepped in front of her. "She ain't going anywhere she don't want to go." Murmurs rippled through the riders. Several reached for weapons. The chief raised his hand again, silencing them. "This is not your concern, white man. This is tribal business. It became my business when I cut her down from your rope." "Our rope." The chief's voice dripped with contempt. "We did not hang her. We merely released her from the protection of our tribe. What the white men did after was their choice." "Mighty convenient," Eli growled. "Cast her out knowing exactly what would happen. Then wash your hands of it." "Eli." Aiyana's voice was quiet but firm. "Let me speak." He hesitated. Every instinct screamed at him to keep her behind him protected. But the look in her eyes stopped him. This was her fight. Her people. Her past. He stepped aside. Aiyana walked forward until she stood 10 feet from the mounted chief. Her chin was high, her shoulders back. The bruises on her neck were visible to all of them, evidence of what their release had cost her. "Chief Running Water," she said. Her voice carried clear across the cold air. "You sentenced me to death for refusing to be property. The white men nearly finished what you started. And now you come here. Why?" Running Water's weathered face betrayed nothing. "Word has spread. A white rancher defied his own people to save you. Now he hides you in his home. The town is angry. They will attack soon in greater numbers. You will both die. And you came to warn us." Aiyana's laugh was sharp as broken glass. "How generous." "I came to offer you a choice." The chief leaned forward in his saddle. "Return with us. Accept your marriage to my son. All will be forgiven. You will live." Eli's hand tightened on his pistol. Aiyana was silent for a long moment. The wind stirred the dust around her feet. "Your son," she said slowly, "beat his first wife until she chose death over marriage. You know this. The whole tribe knows this. And you would give me to him anyway. He is my heir. He needs a strong wife to give him strong sons. You are the strongest woman in our tribe. I was the strongest, before you cast me out like garbage. A mistake." Running Water's voice softened slightly. "One I am offering to correct. Come home, Aiyana. This white man cannot protect you. His own people will burn this ranch to the ground. You will die here alone, far from your ancestors." Eli watched Aiyana's face, saw the conflict there, the longing for belonging, the fear of what acceptance would cost. "No," she said finally. Running Water's expression hardened. "Think carefully, girl. This is your last chance." "I have thought." Her voice grew stronger. "I thought while your son's rope crushed my throat. I thought while white men cheered for my death. I thought while this stranger, this white man you despise, risked everything to save someone he had never met." She turned slightly, looking at Eli, then back at her chief. "I will not return. I will not marry your son. I will not belong to any man who sees me as property instead of a person." "Then you choose death." "No." Her chin lifted higher. "I choose freedom. For the first time in my life, I choose freedom." The Cherokee riders shifted uneasily. Some looked at Running Water, others at Aiyana. The tension crackled like lightning before a storm. Running Water stared at her for a long moment. His face was impossible to read. "So be it," he said finally. "You are no longer Cherokee. You have no tribe, no ancestors, no people. You are nothing." "I am not nothing." Aiyana's voice didn't waver. "I am Aiyana, and I am more than what you tried to make me." The chief held her gaze. Something flickered in his eyes, regret maybe, or grudging respect. Then it was gone. He turned his horse. The other riders followed. "When the white men come," Running Water called over his shoulder, "we will not help you. Remember that." The Cherokee riders disappeared into the dust. Eli moved to stand beside Aiyana. She was trembling slightly, the first sign of weakness she'd shown. "You all right?" he asked quietly. She was silent for a moment. Then she let out a long, shaky breath. "I just told my chief, my people, that I would rather die than return to them." Her voice cracked. "I have no one now, no tribe, no family, nothing." Eli hesitated. Then slowly he reached out and took her hand. "You got me," he said. "That ain't nothing." She looked at him. Her eyes were wet, but she didn't cry. Cherokee women didn't cry, he was learning. "Why do you keep helping me?" she whispered. "You do not even know me." "I know enough." He squeezed her hand gently. "I know you're brave. I know you're strong. I know you'd rather die than be owned. That's more than I know about most people. That is not much to build on." "Maybe not." He shrugged. "But it's a start." They stood there in the fading afternoon light, two broken people holding on to each other at the edge of the world. Aiyana's fingers tightened around his. She didn't let go. "If we survive this," she said quietly, "I will tell you my mother's name. Her real name. The one she whispered to me before she died." Eli nodded. "And I'll tell you about Sarah. What she looked like when she laughed." "Is that a promise?" "It's a promise." They walked back to the cabin together. The sun was setting, painting the sky red and gold. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled. Eli knew Harlan would come. Tonight, probably. With more men and more guns and more hate. But for the first time in 5 years, he wasn't facing the darkness alone. And somehow, that made all the difference. Inside the cabin, Eli began loading every weapon he had. 2 Winchesters, 3 pistols. a shotgun he hadn't touched in years. Aiyana watched him work. "You are preparing for war." "I'm preparing for Harlan." He checked the action on the shotgun. Smooth, still good. "He'll wait until full dark, bring every drunk and hothead in town, try to burn us out." "How many men does he have?" "Hard to say, 20 maybe, 30 if he's persuasive." "Against 2 of us." "Against 2 of us." Eli looked up at her. Scared. Aiyana picked up one of the Winchesters, checked the chamber with practiced ease. "I was scared when they put the rope around my neck. I was scared when I could not breathe. I was scared when I thought no one would come." She met his eyes. "I am not scared anymore." "What changed?" "Someone came." The words hit him harder than he expected. His throat tightened. "I almost didn't," he admitted. "Almost rode away. Almost told myself it wasn't my problem." "But you did not." "No." "Why?" Eli set down the shotgun, rubbed his face with both hands. The question kept coming back, and he kept struggling to answer it. "My wife," he said slowly. "Sarah. When I left for the war, she told me something. She said, 'Eli, promise me you'll always do what's right, even when it's hard, even when it costs you everything.' And I promised." He looked at Aiyana. "I broke that promise 100 times during the war. Did things I ain't proud of. Saw things I can't forget. And when I came home and found out she was dead, I figured the promise died with her. But it did not." "No." His voice was rough. "Turns out promises like that don't die. They just wait. Wait until you're standing in front of a crowd watching someone hang and you realize you got a choice. Keep breaking that promise, or finally keep it." Aiyana set down his rifle, crossed the room, stood directly in front of him. "Your wife," she said quietly. "She sounds like a wise woman." She was. "And you loved her?" "More than anything." Aiyana nodded slowly. "Then she would be proud of you. For what you did yesterday. For what you are doing now." Eli's vision blurred. He blinked hard. "Maybe," he said. "I hope so." Aiyana reached up. Her calloused fingers brushed his cheek. Gentle. Brief. "When the men come tonight," she said, "we will fight. And if we die, we will die standing. Together." "Together," he repeated. "I am glad I did not die alone on that rope." Her voice was barely a whisper. "I am glad you came." Before he could respond, a sound split the night. Hoofbeats, dozens of them, and the distant flicker of torches. Harlan had arrived. Eli grabbed his Winchester. "They're here." Aiyana was already moving, taking position by the window. Her eyes had gone cold. Battle ready. "Let them come," she said. Outside voices rose in the darkness. Angry, drunk, baying for blood. Eli McCarter looked at the Cherokee woman who had entered his life less than 2 days ago. The woman he'd saved. The woman who was saving him right back. "Whatever happens," he said, "I don't regret cutting that rope." Aiyana smiled. It was the first real smile he'd seen from her. "Neither do I." The torches grew closer. The shouting grew louder. And 2 people who had been ready to die alone prepared to fight for their lives together. The first torch sailed through the night and slammed into the cabin wall. Eli fired before he could think. The shot cracked through the darkness, and somewhere out there a man screamed and dropped. "Stay low!" he shouted to Aiyana. She was already moving, crouched beneath the window, Winchester pressed to her shoulder. Her eyes tracked the dancing torches like a hunter watching prey. "I count 20, she said. "Maybe more behind the barn." "Harlan!" Eli's voice cut through the chaos. "This don't have to happen. Right away now, and nobody else gets hurt." Laughter answered him, cruel and drunk. "You had your chance, McCarter." Harlan's voice came from somewhere to the left. Now we're gonna burn you out like the rat you are, you and your savage whore." Another torch flew. This one hit the roof. Flames licked at the dry shingles. Aiyana rose just enough to aim. Fired. A man holding a torch spun and fell. "Good shot," Eli breathed. "My father taught me well." More gunfire erupted from outside. Bullets punched through the cabin walls, sending splinters flying. Eli ducked as one whistled past his ear. "They're spreading out," Aiyana called. "Trying to surround us." Eli's mind raced. 20 men, maybe more. 2 rifles between them. A cabin that was already starting to burn. The math wasn't good. "The root cellar," he said suddenly. "Under the floor. There's a tunnel that comes out near the creek. Sarah made me dig it in case of Indian raids." Aiyana's jaw tightened at the irony. And now a Cherokee woman will use it to escape white men. Life's funny that way. He grabbed her arm. "Go. I'll hold them off." "No." "Aiyana." "I said no." She pulled free. "I did not survive the rope to run like a coward. We fight together or we die together. Choose." Eli wanted to argue, wanted to throw her over his shoulder and force her to safety, but the look in her eyes stopped him cold. This wasn't stubbornness. This was something deeper, something sacred. "Together then," he said. She nodded once. "Together." The roof was burning now. Smoke poured down from the ceiling, thick and choking. Eli's eyes watered. His lungs burned. "We need to get out," he shouted. "Can't fight if we can't breathe. The back door." They moved as one, staying low. Eli kicked open the back door and rolled out into the cold night air. Aiyana followed, landing in a crouch beside him. Immediately, gunfire erupted from their right. Eli returned fire without aiming, just trying to buy time. Aiyana sprinted toward the barn, and he followed, bullets kicking up dirt at his heels. They crashed through the barn doors and slammed them shut. "This is not better," Aiyana gasped. "They will burn this too." "I know, but there's horses and weapons." He grabbed his saddle from the hook, threw it on his mare. His hands moved faster than they had in years. Survival sharpened everything. Aiyana found the shotgun he kept hidden in the hay, checked it, loaded. Outside, Harlan was shouting orders. "Surround the barn. Don't let them escape." "Eli." Aiyana's voice was strange, quiet. He turned. She was standing at the back of the barn, looking through a crack in the wall. Her face had gone pale. "What is it?" "More riders. Coming from the east." Eli's stomach dropped. Reinforcements. Harlan must have sent for help from the neighboring towns. They were dead. He moved to the crack and looked out. His breath caught. Not white men. Not townsfolk. Cherokee. 30 of them at least, riding hard toward the ranch. At their head was Chief Running Water, his gray hair streaming behind him. "Your people," Eli said slowly. "I thought they wouldn't help." Aiyana shook her head. "I do not understand," he said. The Cherokee riders hit Harlan's men like a thunderbolt. Eli watched in shock as the two forces collided. Horses screamed, men fell. The organized mob became chaos in seconds. "Why?" Aiyana whispered. "Why would he come?" A Cherokee warrior burst through the barn doors. Eli raised his rifle, but Aiyana knocked it aside. "Wait." The warrior was young, barely 20. He looked at Aiyana with something like awe. "The chief sent me," he said in Cherokee. Then in broken English, he says, he was wrong. He says his son confessed, beat his first wife, killed her, made it look like drowning. Aiyana's face went white. "What?" "Running Water found out tonight. His son tried to flee. The chief—" The young warrior paused. "The chief killed him, his own son, for what he did." Eli felt the world tilt beneath him. Running Water killed his own son. Aiyana's voice shook. "For me. For justice. For his first wife. For you." The warrior stepped closer. "He says he should have believed you, should have protected you. He says he is sorry." Outside the battle raged. Gunfire and war cries mixed in a terrible symphony. Aiyana stood frozen. Tears streamed down her face, the first tears Eli had seen from her. "Go," the young warrior said. "Fight. The chief is buying you time." Eli grabbed Aiyana's shoulder. "You hurt him. Let's move." She blinked, nodded, wiped her face with the back of her hand. "Yes," she said. "Let us finish this." They burst out of the barn together. The scene before them was chaos. Cherokee warriors and townsfolk locked in combat, horses rearing, bodies falling, and in the center of it all, Sheriff Harlan, his face twisted with rage, shooting wildly into the melee. "Harlan!" Eli roared. The sheriff spun. Their eyes met across the battlefield. "You!" Harlan screamed. "This is your fault, all of it!" He raised his pistol. Eli raised his rifle. Both fired. Harlan's shot went wide, clipping Eli's shoulder. Pain exploded through his arm, but his own bullet found its mark. Harlan staggered, looked down at the red bloom spreading across his chest. "Damn you," he whispered. "Damn you to hell." He fell. The remaining townsfolk saw their leader drop. Some fled immediately. Others threw down their weapons. The Cherokee warriors rounded them up, disarming them with brutal efficiency. Eli dropped to one knee, clutching his bleeding shoulder. The world swam around him. "Eli!" Aiyana was beside him instantly. Her hands pressed against the wound. "You are shot." "Just a graze." He tried to stand. Failed. "Okay, maybe more than a graze." "Do not die." Her voice cracked. "Do you hear me? Do not die." "Wasn't planning on it." Chief Running Water rode up his horse, stamping nervously. He looked down at Eli, then at Aiyana. His weathered face was impossible to read. "You fought well," he said to Eli, "for a white man." "High praise," Eli grunted. Running Water dismounted. He stood before Aiyana, and for a moment neither spoke. "I was wrong," the chief said finally. His voice was heavy. "My son. I did not want to see what he was, what he did. I blamed you for speaking truth I did not want to hear." Aiyana's jaw trembled. "You cast me out, left me to die." "Yes." He didn't look away. "There is no excuse, no forgiveness I can ask for. But I can tell you this, my son is dead. By my hand. Justice has been served." "Justice?" Aiyana's voice rose. "You call that justice? Your son is dead, yes. But his first wife is still dead. I still carry these scars." She touched her throat. "Justice would have been believing me from the beginning." Running Water bowed his head. "You are right. I know I am right." Silence stretched between them. Eli watched his wound forgotten. "You cannot come back," Running Water said quietly. "The tribe, they would not accept it. Too much has happened." "I do not want to come back." Aiyana straightened. "I have found a new place, a new purpose." The chief's eyes moved to Eli. Something flickered in them, understanding maybe, or grudging respect. "The White Rancher," he said. "You choose him. I choose myself." Aiyana's voice was steel. "He simply happens to be standing beside me." Running Water almost smiled. Almost. "Then stand well," he said. "Both of you." He mounted his horse, raised his hand to his warriors. They began to ride away, leaving behind the burning cabin, the scattered bodies, the chaos of the night. "Chief!" Aiyana's voice stopped him. Running Water turned. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for coming, for trying to make it right." The old chief studied her for a long moment. "Your mother," he said. "She would be proud of you. She was fierce like you, unbreakable." Aiyana's breath caught. "You knew my mother. I loved your mother, before she married your father." Running Water's voice softened. She was the bravest woman I ever knew. Until tonight. He rode away without another word. Aiyana stood motionless, watching until the Cherokee riders disappeared into the darkness. Aiyana. Eli's voice was weak. I hate to interrupt, but I'm bleeding pretty bad here. She snapped back to reality, rushed to his side. We need to get you inside. We need... She stopped, looked at the burning cabin. There is no inside anymore. Barn still standing. Barely. Beggars can't be choosers. She helped him up, his good arm draped over her shoulders. Together they stumbled toward the barn. Doc Whitmore appeared from somewhere. Eli hadn't even known the old physician was there. His face was pale, his hands shaking, but his voice was steady. Let me see that wound. They got Eli into the barn, propped against a hay bale. Doc Whitmore worked quickly, cleaning and bandaging the shoulder. Bullet went clean through, the doc said. You're lucky. Don't feel lucky. You're alive. That's lucky enough. Aiyana knelt beside Eli, her hand resting on his chest. She hadn't let go of him since the fighting stopped. The town, she said to Doc Whitmore. What will happen now Harlan is dead? Many of his men, too. The old doctor sighed. Hard to say. Some folks will be angry. Others might see this as a chance for change. He looked at Eli. You've got friends in town, McCarter. More than you know. People who were too scared to speak up against Harlan. Lot of good that did. Fear makes cowards of us all. Doc Whitmore stood. But cowards can find courage. Sometimes it just takes someone else going first. He gathered his bag, paused at the barn door. For what it's worth, he said, I'm glad you cut that rope. Harlan was a poison in this town. Has been for years. Maybe now we can start healing. He left. Eli and Aiyana sat in silence. Outside the cabin smoldered orange embers glowing against the black sky. Your home, Aiyana said quietly. It is gone. It was just a building. Eli's voice was tired but calm. 4 walls and a roof. Nothing I can't rebuild. You would rebuild after all this. What else would I do? He turned his head to look at her. Run, hide. Spend another 5 years alone feeling sorry for myself. He shook his head. No, I'm done with that. What do you want now? The question hung in the smoky air. Eli thought about Sarah. About the promise he'd made her all those years ago. About the promise he'd finally kept. I want to live, he said. Really live. Not just exist. And how will you do that? He reached out with his good hand, took hers. I reckon I'll start by asking if you want to help me rebuild. Aiyana looked at their joined hands. At the ruined cabin. At the stars appearing one by one in the clearing smoke. I do not know how to build a white man's house, she said. I'll teach you. I do not cook white man's food. I'll survive. I am difficult, stubborn. I do not take orders well. I noticed. Eli squeezed her hand. I ain't asking for easy. I'm asking for real. Aiyana was quiet for a long moment. My mother's name, she said finally. The secret name she whispered to me before she died. Eli waited. Whispering Wind. That was her name. Aiyana's voice trembled. She told me to remember it, to carry it with me always, to never forget who I came from. Whispering Wind, Eli repeated. That's beautiful. She was beautiful, strong, kind. A tear slid down Aiyana's cheek. I have not spoken her name aloud since she died. 21 years of silence. Why tell me now? Aiyana turned to face him fully. Her dark eyes glistened in the ember light. Because you asked me to stay, she said, and I am going to say yes. Eli's heart stuttered. You mean that? I mean that. She lifted their joined hands. pressed them to her heart. I will help you rebuild. I will learn your ways. I will stand beside you against whatever comes. And in return, you will remember her name. Whispering Wind. You will help me carry it. I can do that. And you will tell me about Sarah, when you are ready. Eli's throat tightened. I can do that too. They sat together as the night slowly surrendered to dawn. The cabin was ash and memory. The bodies of the fallen were being gathered by the surviving townsfolk. Everything had changed. But here in this half-burned barn, two people who had been ready to die alone had found something worth living for. Maggie Hollister appeared at the barn door as the first light touched the mountains. Her face was drawn, her dress stained with smoke and something darker. Mr. McCarter. Her voice was hesitant. I wanted to say... Eli looked up. Say what, Mrs. Hollister. The old woman's lip trembled. I'm sorry. For the things I said. For the rock my grandson threw. For all of it. Aiyana's hand tightened on Eli's. We were scared, Maggie continued. Harlan told us stories. Terrible stories about what Indians did to settlers. Made us believe every native was a murderer waiting to happen. She wiped her eyes. But tonight I saw Cherokee warriors ride in to save a white man's life. Saw them fight and die for someone they had every reason to hate. She stepped closer, looked at Aiyana. I don't know how to fix what's been broken, but I'd like to try, if you'll let me. Aiyana studied the old woman for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. My mother used to say that hatred is a fire that burns the one who holds it. Her voice was quiet. You have let go of your fire. That takes courage. Maggie sobbed, actually sobbed. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for your grace. She hurried away. Eli watched her go. Think she means it. I think she wants to mean it. Aiyana leaned her head against his good shoulder. That is a beginning. Beginnings. Eli smiled despite everything. Guess we're full of those tonight? Yes. Aiyana closed her eyes. We are. The sun rose over the mountains, painting the sky gold and pink. Somewhere in the distance, a meadowlark sang its morning song. Eli McCarter sat in his ruined barn, bleeding and exhausted, and more alive than he'd felt in 5 years. Beside him, Aiyana breathed slowly, finally letting herself rest. And though the road ahead was uncertain, though enemies might still lurk in the shadows, though wounds both physical and emotional would take time to heal, neither of them was alone anymore. That was worth every bullet, every burn, every scar. That was worth everything. 3 days after the battle, Eli woke to the sound of hammering. He sat up too fast. Pain shot through his wounded shoulder. He cursed under his breath and stumbled out of the barn where they'd been sleeping. Aiyana stood in the ruins of the cabin pulling charred boards from the wreckage. Her braids were tied back. Her sleeves rolled up. Sweat glistened on her forehead despite the morning chill. What are you doing? Eli called. What does it look like? She tossed a blackened plank aside. Clearing the mess. Cannot rebuild on top of ashes. Doc said I'm supposed to rest. Then rest. She grabbed another board. I did not ask for your help. Eli watched her work for a moment. Then he walked over and started pulling debris with his good arm. Aiyana glanced at him. You are stubborn. Look who's talking. Something almost like a smile crossed her face. They worked in silence. By midday, they'd cleared most of the burned timber. The foundation was still solid, good stone that had survived the flames. Eli stood looking at it, wiping his brow. We can rebuild on this, he said. Won't take more than a few weeks if the weather holds. Where will we get wood? There's a stand of pines about 2 miles north. I've been meaning to clear some of them anyway. We will need help. Your shoulder. I know. Aiyana set down the board she was holding. You have no friends in town, not anymore. Maybe, maybe not. Eli squinted toward the road. Guess we'll find out. As if summoned by his words, a wagon appeared on the horizon. Then another, and another. Eli's hand moved to his pistol. Wait. Aiyana touched his arm. Look. The wagons weren't carrying armed men. They were carrying lumber, tools, supplies. Doc Whitmore drove the first wagon. Behind him came Maggie Hollister. And behind her, a dozen other townsfolk, men and women, Eli recognized from the general store, the blacksmith shop, the church. What in God's name? Eli breathed. Doc Whitmore pulled his wagon to a stop. His old face creased into a smile. Heard you might need some help rebuilding, he said. Figured we'd lend a hand. Why? Because it's the right thing to do. The old doctor climbed down. And because some of us are tired of being cowards. Maggie Hollister approached her arms full of blankets. I brought bedding and food. My daughter baked bread this morning. Eli didn't know what to say. He looked at Aiyana. She looked back at him, equally stunned. Mr. McCarter. A young man stepped forward. Eli recognized him, Jacob Turner, the blacksmith's apprentice. I know I was in that crowd. The day they... He swallowed hard. The day they tried to hang Miss Aiyana. I didn't do nothing to stop it. I just watched. A lot of people just watched, Eli said carefully. That's what I mean. Jacob's voice cracked. I've been thinking about it every night since. Couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. My pa asked what was wrong and I told him everything, and he said... The boy wiped his eyes. He said a man who watches evil and does nothing is just as guilty as the man who does it. Aiyana stepped forward. Your father sounds wise. He is, ma'am, and he's here too. Brought his tools. Jacob pointed to an older man unloading the second wagon. Said if Mr. McCarter was brave enough to do what's right, least we can do is help him put his house back together. Eli's throat tightened. He'd spent 5 years believing the world was cruel and cold, that people only looked out for themselves. That hope was a fool's luxury. But here they were, the same townspeople who had cheered for Aiyana's death, now bringing lumber and bread and blankets. I don't understand, he said quietly. 3 days ago you wanted us both dead. Doc Whitmore sighed. 3 days ago we were scared. Harlan kept us scared. Told us stories about Indian raids, massacres, things that happened 20 years ago to people hundreds of miles away. Made us think every native was an enemy. And now Harlan's dead, and we've had time to think. The doctor looked at Aiyana. When those Cherokee riders came to help you when they fought and died for a white rancher who'd saved one of their own, it changed something. Made us realize we'd been fed lies. Just like that. Aiyana's voice was skeptical. 3 days and 20 years of hatred disappears. No. Maggie Hollister spoke up. 20 years of hatred doesn't disappear in 3 days, but it can start to. If people are willing to try. She reached into her wagon and pulled out something wrapped in cloth. Handed it to Aiyana. This was my grandmother's, Maggie said. She brought it from Ireland when she was a girl. My family were immigrants too once, hated and feared and told we didn't belong. Aiyana unwrapped the cloth. Inside was a small silver cross on a delicate chain. I'm not asking you to forgive us, Maggie continued. I'm not sure we deserve it, but I'm asking for a chance to prove we can be better. Aiyana held the cross in her palm, looked at it for a long moment. My mother had a necklace, she said quietly. Sacred beads passed down through generations. I lost it when they cast me out. Then maybe this can be the start of something new? Aiyana looked up at the old woman, then slowly she nodded. I will accept your gift, she said. Not as forgiveness, but as possibility. Maggie's eyes filled with tears. That's more than we deserve. The work began. Men hauled lumber and raised walls. Women organized supplies and cooked meals. Children ran messages and fetched water. By sunset, the skeleton of a new cabin stood where the old one had burned. Eli sat on a barrel watching it all. His shoulder throbbed, but he barely noticed. "You should rest." Aiyana appeared beside him with a cup of water. "I'm fine." "You are not fine. You are favoring your left arm and wincing every time you breathe. When did you become a doctor? When did you become so stubborn about accepting help?" Eli laughed despite himself. "Fair point." She sat beside him. They watched the townsfolk work. "This is strange," Aiyana said quietly. "Being helped by the people who wanted me dead. Strange good or strange bad? I do not know yet." She took a sip of water. "In my tribe, when someone wronged you, they could offer restitution. Gifts, labor service. A way to restore balance. Is that what this feels like?" "Perhaps." She looked at him. "Or perhaps it is just people trying to ease their guilt." "Does it matter which one?" Aiyana considered this. "My mother would say that actions matter more than intentions, that a man who does good for selfish reasons still does good." "Smart woman, your mother." "She was." Aiyana's voice softened. "She would have liked you, I think." "Yeah." "Yes." She appreciated stubborn men who refused to give up. Eli felt warmth spread through his chest that had nothing to do with the evening fire someone had built. "Tell me more about her," he said. "About your family. Your life before? Before the rope. Before all of it." Aiyana was quiet for a moment. Then she began to speak. She told him about growing up on the reservation, about her father teaching her to hunt, to track, to read the land like a book, about her mother's medicine knowledge, the herbs and poultices that could cure fevers and heal wounds. She told him about the trail of tears, the stories passed down from survivors, the thousands who died, the children who never reached Oklahoma, the culture nearly destroyed by forced marches and broken promises. She told him about the loneliness after her parents died, the pressure to marry, the chief's son with his cruel eyes and violent hands. "I knew what he was," she said. "I saw how he treated his first wife, how she flinched when he entered a room, how she wore long sleeves even in summer to hide the bruises. And nobody did anything. He was the chief's son, untouchable." Aiyana's jaw tightened. "When she drowned herself, they said it was an accident. Everyone knew the truth. Nobody spoke it. Until you. Until me." She looked at her hands. "I told the council what I had seen, demanded justice for her death. They called me a liar, a troublemaker, said I was jealous because I had been chosen as his next wife. That's when they cast you out. That is when they decided I was too dangerous to keep." Aiyana's voice was bitter. "A woman who speaks truth is more threatening than a man who kills." Eli reached over and took her hand. She let him. "You're not dangerous," he said quietly. "You're brave. There's a difference. In my experience, the world does not see a difference." "Then the world's wrong." She looked at him. Really looked the way she had that first day when she was hanging from the rope. "You are a strange man, Elijah McCarter." "So I've been told. Most white men would have left me to die, would have believed the lies about my people, would have thought I deserved what happened. I ain't most white men. No." Her fingers tightened around his. "You are not." They sat together as darkness fell. Around them the sounds of construction faded as the townsfolk settled in for the night. Some had brought tents. Others slept in their wagons. All had chosen to stay and help. "Eli." Aiyana's voice was barely a whisper. "Yeah." "I am scared." He turned to look at her. In all the time he'd known her, which he realized with a start was less than a week, he had never seen her admit fear. "Of what?" "Of this." She gestured at the half-built cabin, the sleeping townsfolk there joined hands. "Of hoping. Of believing things can be different." "Why does that scare you?" "Because I have hoped before. I hoped my mother would survive the walk. I hoped my father would live to see me marry. I hoped my tribe would believe me about the chief's son." Her voice cracked. "Every time I hoped, the world crushed it." Eli squeezed her hand. "I know that feeling. How do you keep going after losing everything?" He thought about it. About Sarah. About his daughter he'd never met. About 5 years of darkness and silence and wanting to die. "I don't know," he admitted. "For a long time I didn't. Just went through the motions. Woke up, worked, slept. Repeat. Wasn't really living." "What changed?" "You." Aiyana went still. "I saw you hanging there," Eli continued, "and something inside me woke up. Something I thought was dead, and I realized I was tired of just existing. Tired of being afraid to care about anything because it might get taken away." "So you cut the rope." "So I cut the rope." He met her eyes. "Best decision I ever made." "You do not know that. We have known each other less than a week. I could be terrible, difficult, impossible to live with." "You're definitely all of those things." Eli smiled. "I like it." Aiyana stared at him for a long moment. Then unexpectedly she laughed. It was a beautiful sound, rich and warm and full of life. The first real laugh he'd heard from her. "You are impossible," she said. "Takes one to know one." She shook her head, still laughing. Then she leaned over and rested her head against his good shoulder. "I am still scared," she said quietly. "Me too. But perhaps being scared together is better than being brave alone." Eli rested his cheek against her hair. "I think that might be the smartest thing either of us has said." They stayed that way, as the stars came out one by one, scattered across the Colorado sky like spilled diamonds. The next morning brought new challenges. A rider appeared from the south, moving fast. Eli recognized the horse before he recognized the man, a painted Mustang that belonged to one of Harlan's deputies. "Trouble," he muttered, reaching for his rifle. Aiyana was beside him instantly. "Who is it?" "Morrison. He was Harlan's second. Thought he'd run off after the battle." The rider pulled up short of the worksite. His face was haggard, his clothes dirty, but his eyes burned with hatred. "McCarter," Morrison's voice cracked. "You think this is over? You think killing Harlan ends this?" "I was hoping." Eli kept his rifle ready. "The marshal's coming, from Denver. I sent word." Morrison's smile was ugly. "You murdered a lawman, McCarter. Cut down a legal execution. When the marshal gets here, you'll hang. Both of you." Murmurs rippled through the gathered townsfolk. "Harlan wasn't lawman," Eli said calmly. "He was a murderer with a badge. There was no trial, no jury, just a mob and a rope. Don't matter what you call it. The law says a man's entitled to a fair trial." Doc Whitmore stepped forward. "The law says you can't execute someone without due process. What Harlan did wasn't law. It was lynching." Morrison's face twisted. "You're all traitors, Indian lovers. When the marshal comes..." "When the marshal comes," Maggie Hollister interrupted, "he'll hear the truth, from all of us, about what Harlan really was, about what really happened. You wouldn't dare. We already did." Jacob Turner's father, the blacksmith, stepped forward, a big man with hands like hammers. "Wrote it all down. Every person here signed it. Harlan's corruption, his brutality, the way he used fear to control this town for years." Morrison went pale. "You're lying." "We're telling the truth." The blacksmith's voice was hard. "Something we should have done a long time ago." Morrison looked around at the faces of the people he'd once terrorized alongside Harlan. No fear in those faces now, only resolve. "This ain't over," he snarled. The marshal will do his job," Eli said quietly. "If that means I hang, so be it. But I'd rather die for doing right than live as a coward." He raised his rifle slightly. Not aiming, just reminding. Now get off my land. Morrison glared at him, at Aiyana, at the townspeople who had turned against him. You'll all pay for this, he spat. Then he wheeled his horse and rode away. Silence fell over the worksite. Is it true? Aiyana's voice was low. Could a marshal come and take you away? Could. Eli lowered his rifle. Harlan had friends in Denver. Might have some pull with the federal law. Then we should run, leave, find somewhere. No. Eli's voice was firm. I'm done running. Done hiding. If the law wants to judge me, let them judge me. At least this time, I'll be judged for something I'm proud of. Aiyana stared at him. You would risk hanging for me. Already risked it once. He turned to face her fully. Do it again in a heartbeat. Something shifted in her expression. Her walls, so carefully maintained, seemed to crack. No one has ever... She stopped, swallowed hard. In my whole life, no one has ever chosen me, over anything. Then you've been surrounded by fools. She moved before he could react. Her hands cupped his face. Her lips met his. The kiss was brief, fierce, a statement more than a question. When she pulled back, her dark eyes were burning. I choose you too, she said. Whatever comes. Around them, the townsfolk pretended not to watch. A few smiled. A few wiped their eyes. Eli's heart pounded against his ribs. Well, he managed. That's good to know. Is that all you have to say? I'm a man of few words. You are a man of excuses. But she was smiling. Actually smiling. All right. Eli took her hand. Here's some words. When this is over, when the marshal comes and goes, and we're still standing, I want to do this proper. Do what proper? Court you, the right way, take you to dinner, bring you flowers, whatever it is a man does when he's serious about a woman. Aiyana tilted her head. Cherokee do not court like white people. Then teach me how Cherokee do it. It involves many tests, proving your worth to the woman's family, demonstrating you can provide, survive hardship. Eli gestured at the half-built cabin, his wounded shoulder, the ashes still scattered around them. I'd say we've got hardship covered. Aiyana laughed again. That beautiful, unexpected sound. Yes, she agreed. I suppose we do. Work resumed. Walls went up. A roof began to take shape. By the end of the third day, the new cabin stood complete, smaller than the original, but solid, strong. A home. That night, Eli stood on the porch of the new cabin watching the sunset paint the mountains gold and red. Aiyana joined him. They stood shoulder to shoulder, not touching but close. It is beautiful, she said quietly. Yeah. I never thought I would have a place again. Somewhere to belong. You belong here. Eli's voice was rough. Long as you want. She turned to look at him. In the fading light, her face was soft, open, more vulnerable than he'd ever seen her. My mother told me something, she said. The night before she died. She said, Aiyana, the world will try to break you. Men will try to own you. Fear will try to silence you. But you are Whispering Wind's daughter. You are eternal blossom. You do not break. You do not bow. You do not stop blooming, no matter how cold the winter. Her voice trembled. For 20 years I tried to live by those words. But I was so tired, Eli. So tired of fighting alone. He reached for her hand. She let him take it. You're not alone anymore, he said. Whatever comes, martial trouble, anything, we face it together. Together. She tasted the word like something precious. I like that word. Me too. They stood there as the stars emerged, as the night sounds of the prairie rose around them, as the wind carried the scent of sage and promise. And somewhere, somehow, Eli McCarter felt the weight he'd carried for 5 years begin to lift. Not gone, Not forgotten, but shared. And that made all the difference. The marshal arrived on a Tuesday 3 weeks after the battle. Eli saw the dust cloud first, then the glint of a badge catching morning sunlight. He set down his hammer and walked to meet the rider Aiyana falling into step beside him. "You should stay inside," he said quietly. "No." "Aiyana." I said no. Her jaw was set. "We face this together. You promised." He had, so he said nothing more. The marshal was younger than Eli expected, maybe 35 with sharp blue eyes and a weathered face that spoke of hard miles and harder decisions. He rode alone, which was either a good sign or a very bad one. "Elijah McCarter." The marshal's voice was neutral, unreadable. "That's me. Marshal James Whitfield, Denver office." He dismounted slowly, keeping his hands visible. "Mind if we talk?" "That depends on what you're here to say." Whitfield's eyes moved to Aiyana. Took in her braided hair, her copper skin, the fading bruises still visible on her throat. "You must be the woman from the hanging," he said. "I am Aiyana." "Cherokee." "Yes." Whitfield nodded slowly. "I read the report Morrison filed. Said you murdered Sheriff Harlan in cold blood. Led an Indian war party against American citizens. Burned your own cabin for sympathy." Eli's hand drifted toward his pistol. "That's a damn lie." "I know." Eli froze. "What?" "I said I know." Whitfield reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a thick stack of papers. "I also received this. Signed statements from 37 residents of Redstone. Doc Whitmore, Maggie Hollister, Jacob Turner, and his father. Half the town near as I can tell." He held out the papers. They paint a very different picture than Morrison's report. A picture of a corrupt sheriff who terrorized his own people, who organized a lynching without trial or cause, who was killed in self-defense when he led an armed mob against a private citizen. Aiyana's hand found Eli's, squeezed tight. "So what happens now?" Eli asked. Whitfield was quiet for a moment. His eyes moved between them, weighing, measuring. "What happens now is I go back to Denver and file my report." He tucked the papers back into his bag. "My report will say that Sheriff Thomas Harlan exceeded his authority, that his death was the result of his own criminal actions, that no charges should be filed against Elijah McCarter or the Cherokee woman known as Aiyana." Eli couldn't breathe. "You're serious?" "I'm serious." Whitfield mounted his horse. "For what it's worth, Mr. McCarter, I've been a lawman for 15 years, seen a lot of men who claimed to be doing right. Most of them were liars or fools. And me, you." A ghost of a smile crossed Whitfield's face. "You're either the bravest man I've ever met, or the craziest. Maybe both." He tipped his hat. "Ma'am, sir. Good luck to you both." He rode away without looking back. Eli stood frozen. His heart hammered against his ribs. "Did that just happen?" Aiyana's voice was barely a whisper. "I think so. We are free. We're free." She turned to him. Her dark eyes were wet. Her lips trembled. Then she threw her arms around him and held on like she would never let go. Eli held her back, buried his face in her hair, let himself really feel for the first time in 5 years. "It's over," he murmured. "It is over." Her voice broke. "Eli, it is really over." They stood there in the morning light, two people who had fought through hell and come out the other side, still standing, still together, still alive. Word spread fast. By afternoon, half of Redstone had gathered at the ranch. Not to threaten or accuse, but to celebrate. Someone brought fiddles, someone else brought whiskey. Before Eli knew it, there was music and laughter and more people on his property than he'd seen in 5 years combined. "This is strange," Aiyana said, watching from the porch. "Good strange or bad strange? I do not know yet." But she was almost smiling. "Ask me again in an hour." Doc Whitmore climbed the porch steps, a bottle of something amber in his hand. Thought you might want this, he said, offering it to Eli. Special occasion and all. Eli took the bottle, looked at it, set it down. Appreciate it, Doc, but I think I want to remember tonight clearly. Whitmore's eyebrows rose. The hermit of Redstone turning down whiskey, now I've seen everything. People change. They do indeed. The old doctor's eyes moved to Aiyana, some more than others. Aiyana stepped forward. Dr. Whitmore, I never thanked you properly, for treating Eli's wound, for standing with us. No thanks needed, miss. Just did what was right. That is rare. Her voice was soft. Doing what is right. Most people find excuses not to. Most people are scared. Whitmore shrugged. Fear makes cowards. But it can also make heroes. Depends on what you choose to do with it. And what did you choose? I chose to stop being scared. He smiled. Took me 60 years, but better late than never. He wandered off to join the festivities. Aiyana turned to Eli. I like him. He's a good man. Just took him a while to remember it. Perhaps that is true of many people here. Maybe. Eli watched the crowd, saw faces that had once screamed for Aiyana's death now laughing and dancing. People are complicated, capable of terrible things and beautiful things sometimes in the same breath. Is that wisdom or whiskey talking? Stone cold sober, remember. Aiyana laughed. That sound he was coming to love. Dance with me, she said suddenly. What? Dance. She grabbed his hand. The fiddles are playing. People are dancing. I want to dance. I don't know how. Neither do I. She pulled him toward the crowd. We will learn together. They danced. Badly at first, stepping on each other's feet, bumping into other couples. But then they found a rhythm. Not the rhythm of the fiddles exactly. Something else. Something that belonged only to them. Around them, the people of Redstone watched. Some smiled, some whispered. A few old-timers shook their heads at the sight of a white rancher dancing with a Cherokee woman. But nobody said a word against it. That night, after the last reveler had stumbled home and the fires had burned down to embers, Eli and Aiyana sat on the porch of their new cabin. Eli. Her voice was quiet, serious. Yeah. There is something I need to tell you. His stomach tightened. All right. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out something small, pressed it into his palm. It was a bead, turquoise blue, ancient. What is this? It belonged to my mother, the only thing I had left of her. Aiyana's voice shook. When they cast me out, I hid it in my mouth, kept it there through everything. The wilderness, the white men, the rope. Eli stared at the tiny bead. You never mentioned it. I was not ready. She looked at him. Among my people, when a woman gives a man something of her mother's, it means she is choosing him, not just for now, for always. The weight of her words settled over him. Aiyana. You do not have to say anything. I know this is fast. I know we have only known each other for weeks, but I also know what I feel. Her dark eyes burned into his. I choose you, Elijah McCarter, not because I have no other choice, but because you are the choice I want to make. Eli looked at the bead, at the woman beside him, at the new cabin and the cleared land and the stars scattered across the endless sky. I don't have anything of my mother's, he said slowly. She died when I was young. Don't even remember her face. Aiyana's expression flickered. Uncertainty. But I have this. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a worn gold band. Sarah's wedding ring. I've carried it every day since she died. Couldn't let go of it. Couldn't let go of her. He held it up so it caught the starlight. I ain't asking you to be her. I ain't asking you to replace her. But I'm asking you to help me build something new. Something that honors the past, but doesn't stay trapped in it. Aiyana stared at the ring, her breath caught. Is that a proposal? It's whatever you want it to be." She was silent for so long that Eli's heart began to sink. Too fast. Too much. He'd pushed too hard. Yes. He blinked. What? Yes. Tears streamed down her face, but she was smiling. Actually smiling. Yes, I will help you build something new. Yes, I will honor your past. Yes, I will stand beside you for whatever comes. Eli's hands were shaking as he slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit. Somehow, impossibly, it fit perfectly. I love you. The words came out rough, unpracticed. He hadn't said them to anyone in 5 years. I know it's too soon. I know it doesn't make sense, but I love you, Aiyana. It makes perfect sense. She cupped his face in her hands. And I love you too, stubborn white man. She kissed him, long and deep and full of promise. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Eli laughed. What? Aiyana asked. Just thinking about what the town will say. White rancher marrying a Cherokee woman. Folks'll talk for years. Let them talk. Her chin lifted. I have survived worse than whispers. That you have. They sat together as the night deepened. Not talking, not needing to. The morning brought new challenges. A rider appeared from the east, a Cherokee rider young and serious-faced. Eli recognized him from the battle, one of Running Water's warriors. Aiyana. The young man dismounted. The chief sends word. What word? He is dying. The wounds from the battle. They did not heal. The warrior swallowed hard. He asks to see you, before he passes. Aiyana went pale. Dying, but it has been 3 weeks. The wound festered. The medicine woman could not save him. The warrior's voice cracked. He says there are things he must tell you, things he should have said years ago. Eli touched her arm. Go. She turned to him. Come with me. Aiyana, I don't think... Please. Her voice was urgent. I cannot do this alone. Not this. He looked at the warrior. Will your people accept me? The chief commanded it. You saved Aiyana. You fought beside us. You have earned the right to come. Eli hesitated only a moment. Then he nodded. Let me saddle the horses. The ride to the Cherokee camp took half a day. Aiyana said nothing the entire journey, her face set in hard lines. But Eli could see the tremor in her hands. The fear she was trying to hide. The camp was smaller than he expected. Maybe 50 people living in a mix of traditional structures and canvas tents. The remnants of a once great nation struggling to survive on the margins of a world that wanted them gone. Eyes followed them as they rode in. Suspicious. Hostile. But no one moved to stop them. Chief Running Water lay in the largest tent surrounded by women who were clearly preparing for death. His face was gray, his breathing shallow, but his eyes sharpened when Aiyana entered. You came. His voice was barely a whisper. You summoned me. I asked. I did not summon. A ghost of a smile. You do not take summons. I remember. Aiyana knelt beside him. Despite everything, the casting out the rope, the betrayal, her eyes were wet. Why did you ask me here? Running Water's hand, thin and trembling, reached for hers. To tell you the truth I should have spoken years ago. What truth? The old chief's eyes moved to Eli standing by the tent entrance. Your man can stay. He should hear this too. Aiyana nodded. Running Water took a shaky breath. Your mother. Whispering Wind. I told you I loved her once. That was true. But I did not tell you everything. What did you not tell me? She loved me too. We were promised to each other as children. But when we came of age, I was chosen to lead. And the council said I must marry the daughter of another chief. For alliance. For survival. His grip on Aiyana's hand tightened. I obeyed. Married another woman. Let Whispering Wind go. She married your father instead. And I never forgave myself." Tears slid down his weathered cheeks. "When she died on the trail, I was there. I held her hand as she passed. She made me promise to watch over you, to protect you." His voice broke. "I failed that promise. When my son demanded you as his wife, I chose him over you. Chose my blood over my word. Why are you telling me this now? Because I am dying, and I cannot face whispering wind in the next world without telling you the truth." He looked at her with eyes full of grief. "You are the daughter I should have had, would have had if I had been braver, if I had chosen love over duty." Aiyana's tears fell freely now. "You cast me out, left me to die." "Yes, and that shame will follow me into death." Running Water's voice strengthened with effort. "But I can give you one thing before I go, one thing to make right what I made wrong." He reached beneath his blanket and pulled out something that glinted in the firelight. A necklace. Sacred beads strung on leather cord. "This was your mother's. The one she wore on the trail. The one she gave me before she died." He pressed it into Aiyana's hands. "It should have gone to you. It always should have gone to you." Aiyana stared at the beads. Her whole body shook. "Mother's necklace," she whispered. "I thought it was lost forever. I kept it, all these years, too much of a coward to give it to you, too ashamed to face what I had done." Running Water's hand fell back to his chest. "Now it is yours, as it always should have been." Aiyana clutched the necklace to her heart. Sobs racked her body. "I do not forgive you," she said through her tears. "I cannot. Not yet. I do not ask forgiveness, only that you remember your mother. Remember that she loved you. Remember that she was brave and strong and beautiful. Remember that you are her daughter." "I will remember." Running Water nodded weakly. His eyes moved to Eli. "White man." Eli stepped forward. "Chief, take care of her. She is the last piece of whispering wind left in this world." The old man's voice faded. "Promise me." "I promise." "Good." Running Water closed his eyes. "Good." His breathing slowed, stopped. The women around him began to keen. Aiyana stayed kneeling beside him for a long moment. Then she rose. Her mother's necklace clutched in one hand. "We should go," she said quietly. Eli followed her out of the tent. They didn't speak on the ride home. Aiyana held the necklace the entire way, her fingers tracing the beads over and over. When they finally reached the ranch, she dismounted and walked to the edge of the property, stood looking out at the mountains. Eli gave her space, made coffee, fed the horses, waited. Finally, as the sun began to set, she came inside. "He was not a good man," she said. Her voice was steady now, calm. "But he was not entirely evil either." "Most people aren't." "No." She sat down at the table, placed the necklace in front of her. "He loved my mother, failed her, tried to make amends at the end. Does that change anything? I do not know." She looked up at him. "But I have her necklace now. After 20 years I have her necklace. That changes something." Eli sat down across from her. "What do you want to do?" Aiyana was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached out and took his hand. "I want to build a life, here with you. I want to honor my mother's memory by being brave the way she was brave. I want to raise children who know both Cherokee and white ways. I want to prove that two worlds can come together instead of destroying each other." Her dark eyes burned with conviction. "Can you help me do that?" Eli lifted her hand, kissed her knuckles. "I can try. That is all I ask." Spring came early that year. The snow melted. The grass turned green. Wildflowers erupted across the prairie in waves of yellow and purple and white. Eli and Aiyana were married on a Sunday in April in a ceremony that blended Cherokee tradition with Western custom. Doc Whitmore served as witness. Maggie Hollister provided the dress white cotton with Cherokee beadwork that Aiyana had added herself. The whole town came. Not everyone approved. Some still whispered behind their hands. But they came. And when Eli kissed his bride in front of them all, even the skeptics fell silent. That night alone in their cabin, Aiyana placed her mother's necklace on a hook above the fireplace. Beside it she hung the silver cross Maggie had given her. And on the mantel below, Eli set a small photograph in a silver frame. Sarah, his first wife, smiling in the way she used to smile before the war, before the fever, before everything fell apart. "She is beautiful," Aiyana said softly. She was. "Do you think she would have approved of us?" Eli looked at the photograph, remembered Sarah's voice on that last morning. "Promise me you'll always do what's right, even when it's hard." "Yeah," he said. "I think she would have." Aiyana leaned against him. "Then she was wise as well as beautiful." "She was." He wrapped his arm around her. "Just like you." They stood there together, the past and the present merging into something new, something stronger. Outside, the Colorado wind swept across the prairie, carrying the scent of sage and wildflowers and possibility. Inside, two people who had been ready to die alone had found something worth living for. Not a perfect life, not an easy one. The town would take years to fully accept their marriage. There would be struggles and setbacks and moments when the old hatred flared up again. But they would face it together. That was the promise they had made, not just to each other, but to themselves. To choose hope over fear, love over loneliness, life over mere survival. Eli McCarter had cut a rope one hot afternoon in Redstone, Colorado. In doing so, he had cut himself free from 5 years of guilt and grief and self-imposed exile. Aiyana, daughter of Whispering Wind, had refused to bow to her tribe to the noose to a world that wanted her silent and submissive. In doing so, she had found a place where she finally belonged. Not because someone gave it to her, because she chose it. And on that spring night in 1880, with the stars scattered like diamonds across the endless Colorado sky, Eli held his wife and knew one thing with absolute certainty. The rope that had been meant to end a life had become the thread that wove two broken souls together. What started with death had become a beginning. What started with hatred had become love. And what started with a single cut of a knife had become a story that would be told for generations. The story of a lonely rancher, a fearless Cherokee woman, and the courage it takes to choose each other when the whole world says you shouldn't. That is the truth of this tale. That is how two people found home. And that, in the end, is all any of us are really looking for.